Behind every Real Housewives franchise is a glittering facade of wealth, power, and prestige. But zoom in on the men standing beside these women, and you'll find a rogues gallery of manipulation, abuse, fraud, and destruction. These aren't just bad husbands, they're criminals, predators, and emotional terrorists who left trails of devastation in their wake. From embezzlement to domestic violence, sexual assault to homophobia, these men didn't just fail their wives, they failed humanity. This is the dark side nobody talks about. The worst husbands in Real Housewives history. Let's start with the obvious. Giudice, Teresa's now ex-husband from Real Housewives of New Jersey. This man didn't just commit fraud, he orchestrated a decade-long criminal enterprise that sent both him and his wife to federal prison, destroyed their family, and got him deported from the only country he'd ever known. For nearly 10 years, from 2001 to 2008, Joe and Teresa systematically defrauded banks. They submitted fake W-2 forms, fabricated pay stubs, lied about employment, and inflated their income on loan applications. Joe wasn't some clueless businessman making honest mistakes. He was running a calculated scheme to live a lifestyle he couldn't afford. But Joe's crimes went beyond the fraud that landed him in prison. This man was a walking disaster of toxic masculinity and disrespect. Throughout their marriage, he was repeatedly rumored to have cheated on Teresa. Multiple women came forward with allegations. He'd openly flirt with other women on camera, showing zero respect for his wife, who was literally supporting him financially through the show. His treatment of Teresa was abhorrent. He called her names, belittled her intelligence, mocked her in front of their children, and made her feel worthless. Remember him calling her a bitch and a kai on national television? That wasn't a one-time thing. That was Joe's normal operating mode. He'd scream at her, dismiss her concerns, and act like she was stupid for questioning his clearly illegal financial dealings. When their fraud finally caught up with them in 2014, they pleaded guilty to 41 counts. 41. Joe was sentenced to 41 months in federal prison. But here's where it gets even more pathetic. This man lived in the United States since he was 1 year old. 1 year old, and he never bothered to become a citizen. So when he finished his prison sentence in 2019, ICE immediately deported him to Italy, a country he hadn't lived in since infancy, where he didn't speak the language fluently, where he had no real connections. He destroyed his family for what? For the appearance of wealth on a reality show? His 4 daughters lost their father because he was too arrogant to follow the law or bother with citizenship paperwork. Teresa had to raise their children alone, while he sat in Italian exile making pathetic Instagram videos begging for sympathy. And even after all that, even after prison and deportation, Joe still couldn't take accountability. He blamed Teresa, he blamed the show, he blamed everyone except himself. The man who ruined his family, cost them millions, and traumatized his daughters never once showed genuine remorse, just excuses and self-pity. Joe Giudice represents everything toxic about fragile male ego. The cheating, the verbal abuse, the financial irresponsibility, the refusal to take accountability, and the complete destruction of everyone around him while playing victim. If Joe Giudice was criminally negligent, Michael Darby from Real Housewives of Potomac is something far more sinister, an alleged sexual predator who used his wealth and power to harass people with impunity. In September 2018, cameraman Orville Palmer filed charges alleging that Michael Darby grabbed and groped his butt while filming an episode at Monique Samuel's baby shower. Palmer stated in court documents that after the grope, Darby gave him a flirtatious look. The cameraman told Darby to stop and immediately reported it to his supervisors. Michael was charged with felony assault and misdemeanor improper sexual contact, crimes that carried a maximum sentence of 11 years in prison. But here's the sick part. The charges were dismissed in October 2018 due to insufficient evidence. Why? Because prosecutors couldn't get anyone to call them back. The production company didn't cooperate. Supervisors didn't return calls. Michael walked away scot-free, returned to filming, and faced zero real consequences. And this wasn't even his first offense. During season 1 of Our Hop, cameras caught Michael grabbing another man's butt at a party, specifically Katie Rost's ex-fiancé Andrew Martin. Michael laughed it off, claiming it was playful and that they were all just having fun. Andrew supposedly laughed, so everything was fine, right? Wrong. That's not consent. That's not appropriate. That's sexual harassment on camera. At the reunion, cast member Robin Dixon revealed even more allegations. That same evening when he grabbed Andrew's butt, we also were made aware that he grabbed a couple of our producers' butts as well. Multiple people, multiple incidents, a pattern of behavior. But wait, it gets worse. Robin also alleged that Michael made an inappropriate sexual comment about her husband Juan Dixon at Ashley's uncle's birthday party. When confronted at the reunion, Michael's defense was that Robin was wrong because he was very drunk and she couldn't possibly remember correctly. So his defense was he was too drunk to remember sexually harassing people. That's supposed to make it better? Let's be clear about the power dynamics here. Michael is a wealthy Australian real estate developer who's 30 years older than his wife Ashley. He holds financial power over younger women and men around him. Crew members who work on this show can't fight back without risking their jobs. Production needs to keep filming. So Michael gets to act however he wants because money protects him. Ashley defended him through all of it. She stood by him, made excuses, claimed the allegations were false, and even suggested the cameraman was trying to profit from lies. She had just announced her pregnancy when the charges hit and chose to protect her wealthy, significantly older husband instead of believing victims. The most disturbing part? Michael has never faced real accountability. The charges were dropped. He returned to filming. He's still married to Ashley, though they separated in 2022 and are now divorced as of 2025. He got exactly what powerful men always get: immunity through wealth and connections. Michael Darby represents the worst of predatory behavior, using power to harass, intimidate, and violate people's boundaries, then hiding behind money and legal loopholes when caught. And the system protected him every step of the way. Russell Armstrong was over $1.5 million in debt when he died by suicide in August 2011. His lawyer stated he was living month to month to support his lifestyle for Taylor and blamed the pressure to maintain appearances on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for straining his finances. But Russell's financial problems were just the surface. This man was a documented domestic abuser whose violence against Taylor Armstrong was horrific and escalated over years. Taylor recently revealed on Investigation Discovery's Hollywood Demons that Russell had nearly drowned her, threatened her life, and once struck her so hard that he fractured her orbital floor, the bony structure that supports the eyeball. Let that sink in. He hit her in the face with such force that he broke the bone around her eye socket. In one incident, Russell threw Taylor in a pool, punched another man so hard he knocked out all his teeth, then jumped in and tried to hold Taylor underwater. "Thought he was going to drown me," she recalled. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment shove. This was attempted murder. In another incident, Russell grabbed her by the throat and threatened to kill her because she served his sons pizza without a vegetable. He said, "If you ever serve my kids a pizza without a vegetable again, I'll kill you." Death threats over pizza toppings. The final violent incident came on Taylor's 40th birthday in June 2011. After giving her 8 pairs of shoes and a card about being a better husband, Russell accused her of sleeping with Chippendales dancers while in Las Vegas with Lisa Vanderpump, then struck Taylor in the face, fracturing her orbital floor. This pattern of abuse wasn't new. Russell was arrested in December 1997 for misdemeanor spousal battery over an alleged altercation with his first wife, Barbara. He was released on $15,000 bail. His first wife also filed documents accusing him of child abuse against their son, Griffin. This man had a decades-long pattern of violence against women and children. And when season 2 of RHOBH started filming, showing Taylor's bruises and the breakdown of their marriage, Russell couldn't handle the exposure. Taylor filed for divorce in July 2011, citing physical and verbal abuse. Just 1 month later, Russell was found dead by apparent suicide in his Los Angeles home. The coroner ruled it suicide by hanging. The same day or day after Russell's death, his business partner Alan Schramm also died by suicide from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Russell's lawyer said Russell was always depressed and disappointed about the divorce and financial issues. But here's what nobody says loud enough. Russell was an abuser who nearly killed his wife multiple times. His death doesn't erase that. It doesn't make him sympathetic. Taylor was left with his $1.5 million debt, lawsuits, trauma, and a 5-year-old daughter who would grow up knowing her father was violent and chose to leave her. Russell Armstrong's legacy is pain, violence, and destruction. Jim Marchese from Real Housewives of New Jersey. Season 6 is perhaps the most universally hated husband in franchise history, and for good reason. This man combined aggressive misogyny, alleged domestic violence, and vicious homophobia into one repulsive package. From his first appearance, Jim was insufferable. He got in women's faces repeatedly, like a rabid dog on crack, and said unspeakable things about his castmates. Cast members despised him for his condescending, aggressive behavior. He'd scream at the women, belittle them, insert himself into their arguments, and act like he owned every room he entered. But the absolute worst of Jim Marchese came after the show ended. During his appearance on Marriage Boot Camp with wife Amber, Jim revealed he blamed her for getting cancer. Read that again. He blamed his wife for her breast cancer. What kind of monster does that? Shortly after Marriage Boot Camp, Jim was arrested for felony domestic violence against Amber. The man who screamed at women on TV was allegedly beating his wife off camera. Amber defended him publicly, but the arrest record speaks for itself. And then came the incident that should have ended any possibility of Jim ever being in public again: his treatment of his gay son. Jim's son, Michael Marchese, started a GoFundMe in 2019 to raise money for college tuition, revealing that his father discovered he was gay in 2018 and kicked him out after 2 weeks of mental abuse. Michael stated, "Since this time, my father has been slowly cutting ties with me until I live according to his standards. Essentially, this meant that I have to be straight and date women while admitting that I chose to be gay." Jim cut off all financial support for his son's college education because Michael is gay. This 18-year-old kid, who had been promised help with tuition, was abandoned by his father for something he couldn't control and shouldn't have to hide. Michael's GoFundMe stated, "My father has refused to help in paying for any schooling because he believes I have to live in his home and follow his preferred lifestyle to be good enough to receive any financial assistance with school." In December 2018, he tweeted, "So true, no straight male wants his son to be gay. A curse, a nightmare." Those are the words Jim Marchese used to describe his own child. When the story went public and Michael's GoFundMe gained attention, eventually raising over $12,000, Jim and Amber tried to spin it. They claimed Michael was spoiled. The school was too expensive, and the whole thing was fabricated for attention. Jim told the media that Michael's whole page is a fraud and insisted he wasn't cut off. But Michael's story never changed, and dozens of people donated to help a kid whose father abandoned him for being gay. Jim Marchese represents toxic masculinity at its absolute worst: misogyny, domestic violence, and vicious bigotry directed even at his own child. He's a blight on the Housewives franchise and on humanity itself. David Beador from Real Housewives of Orange County might not have gone to prison or faced charges, but his psychological abuse of wife Shannon was so disturbing that viewers could see her deteriorating in real time on camera. Shannon revealed during season 10 that David had a long-term affair. Though they tried to work through their problems, David's attempts to reconcile always seemed forced and inauthentic. He cheated, got caught, then made Shannon feel like she needed to earn him back. Classic manipulation. During season 11, Vicki Gunvalson alleged that David was physically abusive toward Shannon during their marriage. Though both denied physical abuse, David had been arrested for domestic battery years earlier. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire. But the most insidious part of David's abuse was psychological. After the affair was exposed, the stress caused Shannon to gain 40 pounds. Instead of supporting his wife during this difficult time, David began aggressively working out as if to mock her and would eat in front of her in a way that can only be described as hostile. While Shannon was emotionally destroyed by his betrayal and physically manifesting that trauma through weight gain, David intentionally worked out obsessively to make her feel worse and ate in front of her in a deliberately cruel way. That's not just insensitive, that's sadistic. Throughout their marriage on the show, David treated Shannon with visible contempt. He'd roll his eyes, dismiss her feelings, make her feel crazy for being upset about reasonable things. He seemed completely uninterested in her, despite every effort she made to try to engage with him. David cheated on Shannon, made her feel unwanted, ugly, and insecure, and never even put an ounce of effort into making their marriage work. This is textbook gaslighting and emotional abuse. Make your partner feel worthless, cheat on them, then act like they're overreacting when they're hurt. Keep them walking on eggshells, desperate for your approval, while you offer nothing but coldness and contempt. Shannon finally divorced David, and he immediately moved on to a much younger girlfriend. Because of course he did. Men like David don't change. They just find new victims. David Beador proved that you don't need to commit crimes to destroy someone. Emotional abuse, gaslighting, and systematic degradation can be just as devastating as physical violence. Jim Edmonds from Real Housewives of Orange County is the poster child for men who abandon their wives the moment things get difficult. This retired baseball player showed his true colors when wife Meghan King needed him most. Jim appeared completely and utterly checked out in every interaction with his wife. His abandonment of Meghan during her painful IVF treatments was particularly damning. While Meghan was going through the physically and emotionally grueling process of IVF, injecting herself with hormones, dealing with side effects, desperately trying to have their child, Jim couldn't be bothered to show up for her, and then it got worse. News broke that Jim was involved in a sexting scandal. He was sexting a woman while Meghan was about to give birth to their child. Not after the birth, not months before. While she was in labor or immediately before. This man was sending explicit messages to another woman while his wife was bringing their baby into the world. Jim didn't just cheat. He showed a complete lack of respect, empathy, or basic human decency toward the mother of his children during her most vulnerable moments. And when caught, he made excuses, minimized his behavior, and acted like Meghan was overreacting. This was Jim's third marriage. Third, he had a pattern of relationships ending badly. But somehow Meghan was supposed to be different. Instead, she got the same treatment as his previous wives: neglect, infidelity, and abandonment. Jim Edmonds represents the worst kind of husband, the one who commits to in sickness and in health, but bails the second there's actual sickness or difficulty. Men like Jim want the trophy wife for photo ops, but can't handle the actual work of partnership. Kordell Stewart from Real Housewives of Atlanta controlled Porsha Williams' every move, what she was allowed to do, what she was allowed to wear, how she was allowed to act, and more. This former NFL player treated his wife like property he owned rather than a partner he loved. The control was visible on camera. Kordell dictated where Porsha could go, who she could see, what she could wear, and how she should behave. He isolated her from friends and family, criticized her constantly, and made every decision for both of them without her input. And the ultimate act of cruelty? Porsha was blindsided by the news of her divorce when it happened. Kordell filed for divorce, and Porsha found out publicly along with everyone else. He didn't have the decency to tell his own wife he was ending their marriage. She learned from media reports and public filings. That level of disrespect, after years of control and isolation, is staggering. Kordell Stewart treated Porsha like she didn't deserve basic communication or respect, then discarded her like garbage when he was done. The only good thing Kordell ever did for Porsha was divorce her, freeing her from his controlling, demeaning treatment. She's thrived since leaving him, while Kordell faded into obscurity where he belongs. Kelsey Grammer's treatment of wife Camille Grammer paints him into a villain of his own making. Despite Camille's longtime devotion to him and helping him through many tough parts of his life, Kelsey seems to barely care about her at all. Kelsey managed one of the worst breakups on the Real Housewives franchise. Camille had just joined the cast of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills when she learned alongside the world that her husband was leaving her. Camille found out her marriage was over by reading about it in the press. Kelsey didn't have the decency to tell her privately. He let her be humiliated on a global stage. Her personal devastation turned into entertainment. He manipulates her into acting the parts he wants her to play by threatening their marriage, and then unceremoniously dumps her cruelly. The psychological manipulation throughout their marriage was constant. Keep her insecure, keep her desperate for his approval, then discard her publicly when he was done. And here's the silver lining that Kelsey probably regrets. Camille had no prenup. Here's to you, Camille. After decades of devotion and public humiliation, at least she got financial compensation for enduring a narcissist who treated her like a disposable accessory.